Hello! Welcome to the final reading of the Athena Protocol. Woo! 3 more chapters and we're done. At the end of chapter 21, in the last video, Jessie had gotten a sniper rifle from her landlord and was going to take out Alex for revenge. Because he apparently poisoned Peggy. So while she's waiting on the roof for her shot, there's another sniper on another rooftop. And she takes him out. She kills him. And then she hears through a walkie-talkie or a phone, a female voice talking to this other sniper. And she says she recognizes the voice. So we're about to find out who it is. I'll let you see Ricky. Ricky, are you enjoying this book? Do you like it? We'll see. All right, chapter 22 starts on page 262. I say nothing, of course. I just wipe off the phone, leaving it back in the sniper's pocket. The police have figured out that there's only one strip of buildings that the shots could have come from, and they're heading toward me. Grabbing my guitar case, I run, crouching down, over to the next roof. Already I can hear men emerging onto the first roof in the block, the one that I was on a few moments ago. I jump down onto the roof next to me. It's a bit lower, and it's a commercial building. Through the skylight in the middle, I can see desks and files and computer terminals. I push at the skylight with no luck, but at the rear of the roof there's a thin fire escape ladder that zigzags down the back of the building, all the way down to an alleyway. How long will it take for the SWAT team to reach this street? Between the raid on the hospital and the shooting at Gregory's home, they can't have had a busier day in ages, and yet there seems to be more of them arriving all the time. I clamber down into the alley and turn quickly into a small street and then into another. The guitar case slows me down, but I can't risk dumping it. The main danger is from the rows of windows all around me. I'm hoping everyone inside all these apartments is glued to their front windows, watching the drama outside the House of the National Assembly. But the truth is that anybody could have seen me climbing down that building just now, and it'll take just one of them to say something to the police for me to become a suspect in Alex's attempted assassination. It'll help when they find the sniper's body, but they could still view me as an accomplice, and that doesn't thrill me, because what I feel like after this trip is a year in a spa, not a decade in a Serbian jail. My feet move as fast as they can without actually drawing attention to myself by running. Blood is pounding in my ears. The voice I heard on the end of that phone was Paulina's, and I don't know what to think, except that she hired that sniper to avenge her father. I keep my hands thrust into the pockets of my jacket, where I take a bit of comfort in the familiar feel of my folded army knife and the bag with the solitary blue pill. There's so much confusion around that I make it out of the area without much problem. There's still a high chance that someone is currently giving my description to the SWAT guys as they go from door to door, sweeping each apartment, but for now, I'm clear. A block away from my apartment, I circle around for a bit to see if anyone's watching the place. On the way, I spot a rubbish truck. That means garbage. Parked outside a greasy cafe. The driver is probably having lunch. I toss the guitar case into it and head toward my room. There's a white van a couple of doors down from me. A nice one, but not dressed up as a phone company van or anything. I hesitate. There's no one in it, which is good, and the rear windows are darkened glass, which is bad. My options are limited. I don't want to go back to the hospital or to the Athena house, not while I'm a possible suspect in the shootings, and I can't go straight to the airport without my passport, which is upstairs. I decide to risk it and head up to collect my stuff. It'll only take me 2 minutes, because I have everything packed. The key sticks in the lock in the familiar place, and everything feels the same as I walk in. I'm relieved. For about 2 seconds. Then a massive set of arms grabs me from behind, pinning my own hands to my waist. I wrench myself to the side and get a glimpse of a broad chest behind me, level with my eyes. Whoever's grabbed me is huge. I'm struggling like mad, lifting my legs off the floor to make it harder for him to keep hold of me. And then I remember to scream. One of his hands comes up to muffle my mouth. He's smart enough to grab a pillow off the bed and slam it over my face so I can't bite him. But I also can't breathe very well now. I twist as hard as I can and wriggle my left arm free enough to hammer down a fist on his inner thigh. He cuffs me so hard on the temple that I stagger across the room. Even as I get up, he's on me with a hood. It smells like it's been used on a lot of people before me, but I can't stop it from going over my head. As I struggle, I stumble and fall, hitting my head on something. The last thing I feel is a searing pain at the base of my skull, and then the relief of blackness. My brain feels like jelly as I start to emerge back into consciousness. The first thing I register is that the hood is off me. My eyes close again for a moment as I recall what happened in the apartment. Snatches of the fight come back to me, and I strain to remember what I was doing before that. Leaving. Because of the sniper. Because of Alex. I open my eyes. There's a stained ceiling above me. Black, oozing, dripping patches of mildew. I'm lying on a mattress, but I'm up high off the floor. I try to bring my hand up to rub at my eyes, but my arm is trapped. Moving my head sideways stirs up a shooting pain, and I blink till it subsides. My arms, both of them, are tied down to a bed of some kind, and they look bare. I realize my clothes are off, and a worn blue smock is covering me instead. My feet are lashed together with a reinforced fabric strap, like an airplane seat belt, but without a buckle. I look sideways, and Paulina is sitting there, watching me. I close my eyes again, then blink them open. Her eyes are clear and watchful, and she's sitting so still, so silently, that I think I must be dreaming her. Paulina, I say, and my voice sounds like someone else's, croaky and weak. I clear my throat and say her name again. If she doesn't react, I'll know I'm hallucinating. But she moves. She uncrosses her legs, gets up from her chair, and comes over, standing tall above me. Her eyes look sad, disappointed. I can see better now, and the fog in my mind is less thick, but I'm still confused. She needs to be careful, or they'll get her too. Paulina, you need to get out. It's dangerous here, I say. She smiles slightly and nods. That's the first true thing you've ever said to me. I watch her silently. I trusted you, Jesse, and now my father's dead. This is not good. On instinct, I try moving my arms again, but it's pointless. I glance around. On my left, on the other side of the bed, a looming shadow solidifies into a tall, broad man in a polo shirt and jeans. Most likely the Hulk who overpowered me in my apartment. Behind him are double doors and a row of empty metal beds like the one I'm tied to. It finally dawns on me where we are. Gregory's abandoned hospital. Apparently abandoned by the police, too. I swallow a surge of panic and look back at Paulina. Your father deserved it, I say. He was my family. She practically spits the words at me. I guess the honeymoon's over then. Maybe it's not like that where you come from, she continues. But here, your family is the most important thing. He buys and sells women, I point out. They all have choices. They just made the wrong ones. You can't really believe that. Paulina. I look at her, into the eyes that I had found so captivating before. There's nothing there that I recognize. No warmth, no humor, no kindness, just rage, and it's burning cold. He was planning to kill people for their organs, I say, just to jolt her into something, some acknowledgement of what's been happening. She smiles. She actually smiles. Disbelief? I wonder, with a shred of hope, but then she speaks. And because of that, many more people will live. Even if you suck at math, that just doesn't add up to a good deal. But Paulina's on a roll, so I keep my mouth shut and let her go on. Alex Uchit could never stop this by killing my father. He did that for show, she says angrily. And then he had the nerve to try to make a deal with me, blackmailing me with information stolen from my home, from my room. She looks at me accusingly. Safe to assume she figured out what I was up to during Kit's concert then. I think it's probably best not to get into it now, though. I keep eye contact and listen, while still pushing at my wrist and ankle straps, trying to find out how they work so I can find a way out of them. I will finish what my father started, Paulina continues, and leave here with the money from that first harvest. There's a word that's been ruined by the illegal organ trade. Harvest. It should make you think of farming and food and wheat and stuff. Where are you going to? Paulina ignores that question, but then, I wasn't expecting her to spill her future address. I'm just trying to buy time. Who buys these organs? I ask. The Victory Clinic? She looks surprised that I know the name. I hold eye contact with her, trying to connect, trying to find some way into that other part of her, the part that must know that this deal is just evil. You don't have to do this, Paulina, I say. You already started selling art. It pays well. Why risk your freedom for this? Even before she smirks, I realize what an idiot I was for believing that those huge chunks of money in her account were from art dealers, and her next words confirm it. Excuse me. I made some money from art, but not enough. And Victory already gave us a down payment, she says. These are not people who you let down. She looks away from me, so she's scared for herself, too. But I saw them release the girls from here on TV, I tell her. A few of them, she says. Enough for the cameras. My heart sinks. So your plans stay the same? Paulina nods, then smiles at me. With one exception. You are going to be my first donor. I stare at her. Frankly, I'm terrified. Paulina sits down on the edge of the bed that I'm lashed to, right next to me. I can feel her leg touching mine as she perches there, and I try to move away, but I can't. She watches me, but I can't stand to look at her. Gently, her finger touches my chin, raising it up until my eyes are forced to meet hers. Your eyes first, she whispers, then kidneys, liver, lungs, and finally, well, we'll see if you really have a heart after all. Her finger touches my chest, and I recoil, pulling away as far as I can, but she leans in even closer. That perfume that used to make my head spin now makes me want to throw up. Her breath touches my ear as she whispers, I can't believe how you betrayed me, Jessie. She pulls back and looks at me, and the mask is down, just for a second. Her eyes look real, like reflections of true feelings, and I know she's been hurt by me. I really felt something for you, she says. I look at her squarely. I wish I could say the same. Then I spit at her, which is maybe not the smartest move, but it gives me a moment's satisfaction, and considering how close I am to death, I might as well take what I can get. Paulina wipes her perfectly draped shirt where my spit has landed and turns to the incredible Hulk beside me. Christoph, she says, tell the doctor his first patient is ready. I don't know where Paulina disappears to, but there's plenty of commotion in the wards next to this one. Low-level sniffling and crying. Then I catch the tones of Paulina's voice, barking instructions. To my right, double doors lead into a brightly lit room where there's a whole lot of activity going on. I catch glimpses of doctors and nurses, heads moving back and forth past a single round window in the door. One man flips on an overhead lamp, another pulls on a face mask. Looks like an operating room. I start to shiver, despite myself. It's cold in here, but really, dread has taken hold of me. Nobody knows where I am. Lee, Kit, Hala, and Caitlin are at the hospital, watching over Peggy. Amber and Tom are back in London, thinking that these organ harvests have been stopped, as does the entire population of Belgrade. Paulina strolls back into the ward through the double doors at the end. Composed and calm, she comes and sits down on my bed. She even takes a moment to straighten my hospital gown, which has gotten twisted in my vain attempts to break free. A regular Florence Nightingale. I keep my eyes fixed on the mildew patch on the ceiling, prettier to look at than her eyes. Who do you work for? She asks. Seriously, does she expect me to just tell her? I ignore her and, for the 10th time, look around the place for any sign of a weapon I could use, in the unlikely event I can figure out a way to get my 4 tied-up limbs free. There's still nothing in sight. Is it British intelligence? Paulina says. Now I look at her scornfully. Like, could she have made a dumber guess? Her right hand is closed in a fist. She lifts it up to my face and slowly opens her fingers. There, on her palm, sits my blue pill. Then why do you carry this? She asks, if not to avoid breaking under torture. She's so proud of herself and her genius deduction, I could throw up, but I make my eyes meet hers as if she's rumbled me. You're so clever, I say admiringly. And before she knows what's happening, I thrust my head forward and bite down on her hand, swallowing up the pill into my mouth. It's down my throat before she can even react. Paulina screams and jumps up from the bed, holding her hand. I seem to have drawn a lot of blood, and I wipe my mouth on the shoulder of my robe while I watch her hop around the room, yelling for help. An alarmed nurse rushes in from the operating room and goes straight back for antiseptic and a bandage. Paulina glares at me, incandescent with rage. However long you have left, I'm going to make it painful, she says. I believe her. Terror hits me again, and I feel the contents of my stomach rising. But I breathe, almost panting. Anything not to throw up. I need that blue capsule to work, and fast. Chapter 23. The upside of working for a team of socially conscious women is that they take invasion of privacy seriously, even for their agents. It's why they never wanted to tag us with permanent trackers. They didn't want us to feel like criminals, or to feel that they owned us. So all I can do now is rely on that blue capsule. I imagine it floating inside me, the coating wearing away in my stomach acid, just enough for the tracker that it contains to be activated. I visualize Amber in London getting a notification, alerting the entire Athena team. I picture Hala jumping on her motorbike, Caitlin joining her. But here's the thing. They're focused on Peggy. They think the mission here is over. They think I'm off somewhere feeling sorry for myself. Who knows if they'll even be on the Athena comms system. The doors to the operating room are propped open now. There are 2 teams of doctors waiting. None of them look over at me. At the foot of my bed, Paulina's hand is being carefully bandaged by a nurse, and Christophe has a hand grasping my scalp, gripping my hair, like the caveman that he is, presumably to stop me from biting his boss again. For a moment, I imagine my funeral. You know, when you're young, you do that sometimes, when everyone's on your case. I used to do it so I could enjoy how sorry Kit would be that she was on tour when I died. But now that my demise is looking more imminent, I actually feel bad at the idea of my mother in so much pain. A crashing noise in the operating room makes us all look up. Another patient is being wheeled in, screaming, a patient I recognize. Dasha. I jerk my head away from Christophe and call her name, struggling harder with my restraints, every ounce of frustration coming out in a desperate attempt to get free. Dasha looks over at me, and our eyes meet for just a moment before Paulina instructs Christophe to close the door between us. He kicks away the doorstop, and it swings shut with a shudder. I can hear Dasha calling out to me, terrified, from the operating room, except she's calling me Daisy, which is the fake name I gave her. It would be comical if it weren't so mixed up with impending death. Paulina's watching me with a small smile. I heard you made a friend when you broke in here, she says. You said I would be the first donor, I said fiercely. We have 2 medical teams, because time is money. Don't worry, you'll be right beside her. The door of the operating room opens again, and 2 nurses come in. They release the brakes on my bed and turn it around to wheel me inside. Paulina watches as the doors swing shut behind me, and just before they do, she raises her bandaged hand to wave goodbye. Inside the operating room, nobody pays me much attention, because Dasha is going nuts. She's clearly kept her spirit because she's fighting, kicking, screaming, giving it everything. The nurses assigned to me have to rush over to Dasha and help restrain her. I know that I'm next. As long as I'm conscious, there's some scrap of a chance I can survive. While they all crowd around Dasha, I look at the tray of surgical instruments beside me. I can't reach them with my hands, but with a small twist of my upper body, I can grasp a scalpel with my mouth. But I have to be careful and just take hold of the handle. It slips precariously between my teeth as I try to grip it, and so I have to drop it onto my chest, in full view of anyone who cares to look in my direction. But Dasha is still keeping them busy. She's moaning now, weeping. The sound of it breaks my heart, but it also helps me push down my own fear. I jerk my body to get the scalpel off my chest. It slides down to my side where it's out of sight, but also out of my reach. Great. I glance over to the other table. One of the doctors is prepping a syringe of something to calm Dasha down, and now they are holding her arms, trying to get the sedative into her. I feel the cold metal of the scalpel against the underside of my arm. I keep working my hand, but gently, trying to ease that blade into my palm without slicing open my own veins in the process. Dasha goes quiet suddenly, and there's a general muttering of relief from the doctors. I feel sweat start to form on my forehead. Poor Dasha. I can hear them firing up a small bone saw. Tears of frustration touch my eyes as I think about how badly I'm failing here. The team standing over Dasha starts swabbing her, ready to operate. In the meantime, my lot of doctors come back to me. I arch my back, desperate to move the scalpel within reach. It helps, a bit, and they all just think I'm trying to escape. Another one of those anesthetics is being prepared, and a nurse swabs my arm. She says something to the doctor, and they both tap at my elbow, looking for a vein. They ask me to make a fist. Really? Like I'm going to make my own murder easier for them? I don't oblige, of course, and so they start looking for a vein in my hand, but I keep moving my hand, so much that the needle scratches me a few times. But at last, I feel the cool metal of the scalpel touch my other palm. Is it the blade or the handle? Outside, something is happening. We all look up. I can hear Christoph's walkie-talkie and a couple of cracks in the distance that I wish might be gunfire. But it's far away, and not only is that needle going to hit me very soon, but over on the other table, the so-called medical team is starting the operation that will end Dasha's life. I move my other forearm back and forth, and the blade scrapes against the ties holding me down. It's a beautiful sensation. But now the doctor looks over his instruments and notices the scalpel is missing. He makes eye contact for the first time, suspicious, and I pull my left arm free. The scalpel has cut through enough of my restraint for me to rip it open. I stab the doctor with the scalpel, right in the bicep. He yells and retreats. I cut through the restraint on my right hand and use my fist to slam into the face of the approaching anesthesiologist. Stop! I yell at Dasha's medics as I cut through the belt across my ankles. I'm up and on my feet, scalpel out, ready to take on the room, but they're not fighters. They drop back, and a couple of them even seem relieved. Outside, I can hear Christoph grunting, and someone crashes against the door, falling into the operating room. It's Caitlin. Her head has taken a bad crack on the door, and she's sprawled on the floor, stunned. I run to help her, but Christoph gets to her before me and kicks her so hard that she's lifted 6 inches off the ground, landing farther inside the operating theater. Kind, brave Caitlin attacked by a monster twice her size. I lunge at him with the scalpel, hooking it into his leg and yanking it down. He roars, but he shakes me off. I feel like a fly attacking an elephant, and he's over by Caitlin again in a heartbeat. She's still dazed, still lying there, and he's so much stronger. He lifts her head to smash it onto the floor as the skylight above us breaks. A shower of glass shatters into the room like a lethal hailstorm, and, with it, the black outline of Hala descends. She uses the momentum of her fall to land on Christoph and knock him over. With 4 well-placed swings of her gun, she knocks him senseless and turns to me, breathless. She takes in my hospital gown, the scalpel in my hand, the gurney behind me, but she doesn't move. Her eyes go to something behind me. On instinct, I freeze, even before I hear the click of a gun safety releasing, followed by the touch of cool metal against my head. Behind me, Paulina breathes into my ear. Don't move, Jessie. Hala glares at Paulina. I swear she almost bares her teeth. Drop the gun, Paulina instructs Hala. Hala's eyes move to mine, a look to assure me that I'll be fine. She starts to lower the gun toward the floor, but I hold her gaze and she stops, understanding what I'm thinking. She takes firmer hold of the gun. Just shoot her, I say, for Paulina's benefit. It's worth it. That freaks Paulina out, because Hala nods, like maybe she would sacrifice me for the greater good. Are you sure? Hala asks, completely deadpan. Yeah. Hala raises her gun at Paulina, who now thinks that even shooting me is not going to save her. She has no choice but to turn her gun toward Hala, which gives me the split second I need to knock my fist backward into Paulina's face, elbow her in the stomach, and twist her arm till she's kneeling on the ground. Her gun hits the floor, and I go to kick it away, but someone gets there before me. Hala's boot smashes ferociously into the gun, sending it skidding into the corner of the room. Then she grabs Paulina by the back of the neck and yanks her up and away from me, pushing her forward to the gurney that I was so recently strapped to. Paulina whimpers under the force of Hala's rage. Hala holds her down with one arm while she reaches for a scalpel with the other. No! I yell, but she can't hear me. She can't hear anyone right at this moment. I know, because I've been there. I run forward just as the scalpel pierces the side of Paulina's throat. I pull Hala's hand back. Get off me! Hala shouts. She's panting with the exertion of subduing Paulina, but I keep my hand on her own. Not fighting with her, but calming her down, gripping the hand with the scalpel firmly enough that Hala can't make a sudden move. Hala looks at me, angrily, but I keep my hand over her fingers. She would have killed you, Hala says, and when her eyes meet mine, they're moist with tears. It takes me a moment to realize that Hala's not doing this because she's full of rage, but because she's full of fear. Fear of losing me. Under the blade, Paulina's throat is exposed and a trickle of dark blood makes its way down her pale neck, where the scalpel has punctured the skin. I'm fine, I tell her, and Hala's other hand comes up to grasp mine in a moment that tells me how much she cares. A moment she'd probably deny for the rest of her life if I ever mention it again, which I won't. She isn't worth it, I say. Trust me. A long moment. Hala pulls away, tossing the scalpel back onto the tray. Then it's like she's back on track suddenly, following protocol. She uses a cord from her jacket to tie Paulina's wrists together, pulling the knot too tightly, but I figure I can let her have that much. Caitlin is coming round, trying to get up, and I reach her in time for her to lean on me as she pulls herself upright. She's badly bruised from the fight, bleeding and limping as well, but she looks at me with a flicker of a smile. Peggy's okay, she whispers. I take a breath, and it catches in my throat, like a gulp. For the first time in a while, I can breathe properly, and it feels good. I take a last look at Paulina's angry eyes, and then I turn away. Caitlin needs my help, and so does Hala. And Paulina was right, in the end. Family is the most important thing. Last chapter. Chapter 24. I know what you think of me, Lee says. You think that I cannot really know what it is to be under pressure, the way you do. The fear of death that takes a year off your life every time you survive it. The depression of waiting alone in an apartment in a place that smells like nowhere you've been before. I listen. I'm sort of intrigued, to tell you the truth. I've never had this much time with Lee. During my first interviews here, she fired questions and I did the talking. Since then, we've only communicated through briefings, other than that small interaction at the hospital in Belgrade. Earlier this evening, Lee and I bumped into each other at Peggy's bedside. We all arrived back in London 3 days ago. Since then, we've unpacked, debriefed, taken turns visiting Peggy at the private clinic that Lee transferred her to, and mostly, we've slept. Peggy's doing well, sitting up, reading newspapers, talking a lot. And when we left her to rest, Lee asked me to join her for a drink at her apartment. It's not the kind of thing you refuse. And actually, I don't mind listening now that Lee is talking. She is eloquent and speaks in long sentences with a precise and formal way of describing things that feels almost old-fashioned. We're sitting alone in her kitchen, which is very clean and white, with stainless steel appliances and ice-colored cabinets and not much sign of food. Above our heads, high on the wall, a round mahogany clock with Roman numerals and Chinese symbols ticks. Maybe it's an antique or a family heirloom. But it's a strange timepiece for a woman who deals in the most futuristic technology. And yet, Lee continues, I have survived a lot from the time I was a small girl. I grew up in the Chinese countryside in the early years of the Cultural Revolution. I watched my father die. He died of illness, but truly, he was broken by unjust rules, rules that men with more pliant characters learn to bend to their own needs. Lee pauses, and I nod. The ticking of the clock is the only sound touching the silence between us. A year later, I was separated from my mother. I was 14 and sent with hundreds of other children from my district to serve my country. I was a soft, shy child, attached to my mother, kept safe by her like a flower bud protected in green leaves. My heart screamed for years. It's a devastating image, a heart screaming. Up until now, I hadn't really considered whether Lee even had a heart or feelings. I look down at the polished wooden floor. A long pause ensues, as if Lee is waiting for me to respond. "Why are you telling me this?" I ask. "Because you have a right to know. You've risked your life many times for Athena, and you should know why we ask that of you, why we will continue to ask it. I don't believe any government wants to help the people we want to help." "So, Athena will continue?" I sit forward in my chair, eager. Lee nods. "I was so busy trying to teach you lessons, Jessie, that I made the mistake of arrogance, of thinking there was nothing I could learn from you." "What did you learn from me?" I ask, surprised. "That whatever the experiences that Peggy and Kit and I have had in our lives, we cannot quite comprehend what you three endure, but we want to help you endure it and become better because of it. There's a Chinese saying that precious stones need sculpting before they become gems." That kind of touches something in me, and I feel a lump rise to my throat. I look down and wait, not sure of what happens next. Lee sits erect on the chair opposite, watching me. "I owe you an apology," she says. Well, that's a shocker. I shake my head and try to shrug it off. Lee gives me a glimmer of a smile and says nothing more. Still, the clock marks off the changing seconds. I glance up at it. "It troubles you? The ticking?" I nod. "Time is passing," Lee says. "I've always felt it." She nods at me, releasing me from my chair, and so I get up to leave. While I've appreciated the talk with Lee, it's a relief to be back in my own home. The lamplight is warm, and Kit comes out of her bedroom in a blue silk robe and a towel wrapped around her just-washed hair and asks me about Peggy. I fill her in, but I'm sketchy about the meeting with Lee because I don't know how to describe it. But it did sound to me as if Athena would continue, and when I ask her, Kit confirms it. While we talk, Kit brings over a bottle of antiseptic and some new bandages. I cut my wrists and ankles trying to get free in the hospital, and I think it makes Kit feel better to do a bit of the old mothering routine. There's a short silence while she unwraps the bandage, and I feel like she's working up to something. "Listen, about Paulina," Kit says, dabbing at me with cotton wool. I'm wary. "What about her?" "You felt something for her." I look down, say nothing, and try to ignore the warmth in my cheeks. Kit tries again. "I didn't know you were attracted to human traffickers," I ask, still not meeting her eyes. Kit smiles. "Well, I was going to say attracted to women." My face is burning. I don't know why. Not being heterosexual is probably the coolest thing I've ever done as far as Kit is concerned. I think it's just talking to my mother about this stuff that makes me uncomfortable. I want her to know everything about me and be okay with it, and yet, what if it's just another thing about me that she doesn't get? I wait in a sort of agony, but she doesn't say anything else. My head is down and I can feel her looking at me, and suddenly her arms are around me and she's pulling me close to her and hanging on tightly. "Jessie," she says quietly, "my Jessie, I love you." It takes a few minutes before I can come out of that hug with any kind of control. Kit sees that I'm sort of emotional, I suppose, because she sits back a bit and gives me a minute, keeping herself busy putting the tops back on antiseptic bottles and whatever. "Jess, I wanted to talk to you about Jake Graham," she says after a minute. I look up. That's out of left field, and my heart sinks. Jake, the intrepid journalist. Did he find something more about Ahmed's killing? Something that could compromise Athena? But Kit holds her iPad out to me, bringing up a newspaper article. "My PR team sent an advance warning. It's coming out in print tomorrow, she says. I take the tablet and read. Money grabber. Kit Love sings for slavery baron. I feel sick. Below the headline is a picture of Kit with Gregory and Paulina, and below that I search for the name of the person who wrote the piece. Jake Graham. I look up at Kit, horrified. The picture must have been sold by that photographer Gregory hired at the party. Once the boss was dead, he probably realized he could make some money without having his legs broken. And as for that so-called journalist, Jake... But before I can spew what I think of him, Kit interrupts. No, Jessie, he's a good reporter. But it's not true! He doesn't know that. I pause, frustrated. Then I look at my mother with something like complete admiration. Talk about taking one for the team. How can you stand it? I ask, looking back at the article. The things he's written make me feel sick. Look on the bright side, Kit says. It's the best cover I could ever have, and we need it because Jake's already written about or connected 3 of us. You, me, and Peggy. He might not see the links, but we have to be careful of him going forward. I nod. It must hurt, though, I say, reading all this. Yeah, just a bit, Kit smiles. You know what we need? Vodka. It'll be a cold day in hell when I let you follow me down that path, my mother says. I was going to say a hot drink. I watch Kit disappear into the kitchen and think about Lee, sitting in her white, antiseptic world. One thing I appreciate about living with a mother from South London, there's nothing that can't be made better by a nice cup of tea. A week later, and the early morning is soft and warm, with a gentle breeze. I'm leaning on the wall inside the back entrance to Athena. Hala and Caitlin are already inside the building. Peggy's coming back today, so we're having a celebration meeting. But I'm hanging around here, in the shadows, waiting for Amber. My pass has been restored, and I'm back on the team, so I don't need help accessing the building. But I haven't been able to get Amber to say anything more to me than yes and no since I got back, which I take to mean that she's still hopping mad at me for breaking into my lockbox. In one hand is a carefully chosen bouquet of roses that I hope will break the ice a bit. In the other hand, I grasp my backup plan. Right on time, 3 minutes to 8, Amber appears around the corner, turning from the brightly lit street into the darkness of the entry area. With the sun behind her, she's nothing more than a silhouette. I can see the spiked ends of her hair and a set of huge headphones over her ears. Moving her head to whatever vintage music she's undoubtedly listening to, she dances. Just a few steps, but really good ones. Then it's like she senses someone's watching. She looks over her shoulder just as I step out right in front of her. Amber jumps, startled, and now I'm really in trouble because she knows I must have seen her secret dancing. What are you smirking at? She demands. I'm trying not to smile, really, but it's hard. Nothing, I say. I hold out the roses penitently. She pushes them back at me and walks on, briskly. It's going to take more than a bunch of flowers to say sorry for what you did, Amber says. I hurry to keep up, holding out my left hand instead. How about a limited edition Kit Love album? Amber slows down and peers sideways at the LP record in my hand. Everyone has their price, I suppose, but I'm careful not to ruin the fragile piece by smiling again. She scans herself in, and I follow hastily. I stand beside her while we wait for the lift doors to open. I've installed a lot more security in the tech cave, she says huffily, just so you know. I don't blame you. Silence as the elevator doors open. I sniff. You changed your perfume, Amber. We both walk into the enclosed space, then watch the door slide shut again. I like it, I say. I don't remember asking your opinion. This time, I do smile. I can't help it, and I hold out the record to her. Is it signed? She asks. No, but I think I can arrange it. Through the glass panels of the Situation Room, I can see Peggy, and she's looking almost like her old self. A fair bit thinner and a little gaunt in the face, but her eyes are smiling as she chats with Kit and Lee. Both Caitlin and Hala are missing. I can see Hala in a corner of the ops area, chatting with Thomas. Well, maybe chatting is a bit of an overstatement. He's talking, and she's nodding while inhaling a muffin and throwing him the occasional smile. I walk into the Situation Room, and Peggy looks up, her eyes lighting. "You shouldn't have," she says. I realize that I'm still carrying Amber's rejected roses, which are a bit crushed. I feel guilty, but I can hardly tell Peggy they weren't meant for her. I hand them over and give her a hug, so relieved that she's back with us. Behind me, Hala comes into the room, wiping crumbs from her mouth with her sleeve. "Where's Caitlin?" I ask. Kit looks up at me with a frown. "She went to the bathroom a while ago. Maybe you should check." Just as I go in through the bathroom doors, Caitlin comes out of a toilet stall. Her hand is at her jacket pocket, and I know she was about to take out the pills. She smiles at me, but she seems a bit shaky. Her face is cut and bruised from the fight at the hospital. "I never thanked you for fighting that overgrown Hulk to save me," I say. "Hey," she says. "It's what we do." She looks away from me and washes her hands, and I get the feeling she wishes I would leave. "You don't have to be embarrassed to have PTSD, I say suddenly. Well, she wasn't expecting that. I can tell she's upset with me. "It's nothing to be ashamed of," I continue. "Jessie, leave me alone." But I plow on. "I messed up by not following orders with Ahmed," I say. "All you did in Iraq was follow orders." She glares at me, but I stay calm for a change. We look at each other for what feels like an age. She's blinking a lot. Just a few more pages. "You didn't hurt anyone, Kate. You just learned you can't trust everyone who gives you an order." Caitlin steps back. She looks angry and disgusted and upset. At herself, and maybe at this whole chaotic world. "But sometimes you can," I add, which sounds like a contradiction, but I realize there are no easy answers. The older you get, the messier it gets. "How do you know the difference?" Caitlin asks. She takes a breath, emotional. As it happens, I've had a lot of time to think about that in the past week. "I think it's something to do with who's giving the orders and why," I say. "In the Army, they just sent you off to a war zone. They didn't ask you what you thought of the war, or if you believed in it. But Peggy and Lee and Kit, they told us what we'd be doing and why, and we chose it. We chose it with them." It's funny, but I look at the Athena founders now, and I think that they must have been like us once. Maybe not fighting for an underground agency, but young, uncertain about things, finding their way through the stuff life throws at you. They've just learned how to get through it with a little more wisdom. Maybe all you can ever do is keep going and try to do a bit better every day. Anyway, I say, that's why I'm planning to listen more and mouth off less. That'll be a nice change. "Oh, ugh," Caitlin says, and we both smile. "So what's happening?" I say once we're all in the Situation Room again. The Athena founders are diplomatically ignoring Caitlin's red eyes. "Paulina's in jail," Kit says, glancing at me. "Good," I say, meeting my mother's gaze. "And Alex?" "Arrested." "For attempted murder?" I ask. Peggy shakes her head. "Corruption. The cryptocurrency keys you found were the hard evidence we needed to prove that he was taking bribes for some time. But we can't go for the other charge without opening a can of worms about what I was doing there. We've also built quite a case against the Victory Clinic," Peggy continues, "and our embassy in Moscow has exerted enough pressure to close it down, along with another clinic that was planning to get organs through them. They didn't want the publicity, so they agreed to do it fast if the press didn't hear about it." "Who are those organs for?" Caitlin asks. "Wealthy Russians who are sick and don't want to wait. Russia does very few transplants compared to European countries, so there's a high demand. Whatever names we gather through Victory will be reported to the authorities." "One more thing," Lee says, looking at all of us in turn. "We're sponsoring Dasha, the girl you rescued, to come live in London. I'll give her a job at Chen Technologies, but really, if she's as strong as you say she is, we should look at training her to join us here. She should certainly be motivated." There's no doubt in my mind that Dasha would be an asset to Athena. You can train weapons and fighting techniques, but you can't train that kind of courage and willpower. You either have it or you don't. I clear my throat. There's something that's been stressing me about my own performance on this mission. About Alex, I say. I should have found out his son was sick and found the crypto stash. Peggy looks at me kindly. His son hadn't started treatment there yet. It needed a big deposit that Alex was hustling to gather. There's no way you could have figured out that link. Maybe I shouldn't have been so quick to trust him. It's like I can breathe freely again. I guess the weight of the worry was heavy on me, that I could have prevented Peggy from coming so close to death. Lee takes a sip from her cup of green tea and flicks on the big screen, breaking the moment of reflective silence. We all watch as a snapshot of a dusty village comes up. It shows a new school building with a crowd of families outside it, and it takes me a moment to recognize Kit, Peggy, and Lee among them, in khakis and hats, smiling at the camera. I exchange a look with Caitlin, then Hala. This is northern Pakistan, Peggy says. 2 years ago. You all know what happened there. We nod. Lee switches the newspaper on the screen and brings up that terrible shot from the newspaper. The charred building, the rows of white sheeted bodies laid out. We all look away, and Lee clicks on to the next photo. The deaths of those girls impelled us to start Athena, Peggy continues, and the man who started that fire was arrested. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The face of a man in traditional tribal clothes appears on the screen, along with stats, name, associates, recent contacts, last known sightings. But he was released without charge, because the local police were either threatened or paid off, so he has never been brought to justice, until now. Our next job? Asks Hala. Kit nods. Yes, but you need to take a bit of time off, all of you. We'll meet back here in a week and go over it in detail. The moment feels solemn, like we've been entrusted with something extra meaningful. Slowly, we all start to pack up our things, ready to leave for now, but then Hala speaks. She looks at Peggy shyly. Is there any news about my brother? I know it's only been a couple of days, but that's out of the blue. So Hala must have asked for help on Omar's immigration file. Peggy and Lee exchange a glance, a moment of silent communication that doesn't make me feel good. Let's talk alone, Peggy says to Hala. We all move faster to clear the room, but Hala's voice stops us. No, you can say anything you want to in front of them. That's huge for Hala, someone who thinks talking about the weather is too personal. My eyes meet hers in a silent question, like, are you sure? She nods and we all sit down again. Omar is on a terrorist watch list, Peggy says. Lee pushes a thin file across the table, but Hala doesn't touch it. She just stares at Peggy. It must be because of where we're from, our Arab names, Hala says. No doubt, Peggy says kindly. He's not a terrorist, Hala protests. He saw what they did to us. You don't understand the pressure that young men are under there, to join one side or the other, or die. Peggy listens, and I can see she feels terrible about it. I'm sure that's the case, she says, but it makes it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to help him with an asylum request. Okay. Her last words are lost under the scrape of Hala's chair. Hala pushes open the door and runs out. From across the ops room, Thomas looks up, but I'm already right behind her. She seems disoriented and heads to the bathroom. When I go in, Hala's leaning against a sink, hands gripping the bowl on both sides. Hey, I say. But her shoulders are shaking, and I realize that she's crying. And not just crying, but weeping. As if everything she ever kept held inside is pouring out. Without thinking about it, I go straight over and hold her. It's not easy because she's pressing her palms against her eyes and her elbows are out. But I find a way just to get my arms around her. She sobs, and I don't know what else to do but hold on. She's probably understood that she may never see her brother again. After a few minutes, the crying subsides. The door to the bathroom opens and Caitlin is there, obviously sent to check on us. And behind her, over her shoulder, Thomas waits worried. My eyes meet theirs over Hala's shoulder. Hala takes a shaky breath and turns away from me to wash her face. Listen, I tell her. If Omar's being pushed to do something, we can find a way to get him out. But we won't leave him here. Hala starts to tear up again. Maybe it's been too long since any one of us took the time to be kind to her. But she gulps a breath and leans back down to the sink. Our next job is in Pakistan. Away. We'll figure it out, I say. She nods and looks at me, glimmer of hope in her eyes. Do you want to go home? Take some time? I ask. She splashes her eyes, wiping the water off her face with that all-purpose sleeve, and shakes her head, refusing the offer. Good, because we need you. For the second time this morning, I shepherd one of my team out of the bathroom. I'm really hoping this is the last I see of that place for today. I wait for them all to go ahead of me. Caitlin walks alongside Hala, a protective hand on her back, and I follow them out, ahead of us. I don't know why I said Jesus. Ahead of us in the situation room, Kit and I are standing up, worried, looking out for us. When they catch sight of us coming back, they glance at each other, relieved, and then Kit looks past the others, straight at me. I pause, because for a moment, it's just her and me, communicating, even at this distance. I feel like she's proud of me. I don't know why, but I can tell. She holds my look for a long moment, and then she smiles. And for the first time in ages, I smile back. I hope I didn't mess up those last few pages too much. I got a little drowsy. So that's the end of the book. We're finished with it. So there will be some final activities posted on Google Classroom to wrap up the novel. Once some more people start turning in some of the activities on there, we might schedule some video chats to talk about the book a little bit. I hope you enjoyed it. I would be very interested to hear your all's thoughts, particularly on the end of the novel. So you might want to just do a little review of the book. Let some other people know if you liked it or not. If you did, encourage some other people to check out the Google Classroom page, join it. Oh, I'm sorry, Ricky. Check out the Google Classroom page and watch the videos so that they can do the extra credit summer reading too. And if you are interested, I'm going to be starting on another book soon. So be watching for videos. I'm going to read Bloodleaf, which I have around here somewhere. But I was going to hold it up for you. Bloodleaf. It has a blue cover. Until then, Ricky, do you want to say bye? Say bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks for watching.